What's up, everybody? Pat here from Crystal Tower Games, coming at you with another deck tech, this time featuring Hope, Estheim. Uh, so, this is a really interesting commander. He's really fun to play. Uh, he, yeah, he's kind of weird because I usually put like a lot of power in my deck. And he does have, I mean, he's a bracket 4. He's very powerful in terms of the cards he's using, but he just feels like you're it almost feels like you're a monk and not a wizard. You know, it feels like I'm kind of dancing around the battlefield a little bit. Um, so Hope has lifelink. He's a 2/2 for 2, so you're going to bring him out turn 1 or turn 2. And at the beginning of your end step, each opponent mills X cards, where X is the amount of life you gain this turn. Okay, so right off the rip, we're going to do two things. We're going to try to increase the amount of milling that we do and increase the amount of life gain we gain throughout the turn. Um, I do want to make a special note about milling in Commander, my personal view on it. If you're milling one person, you're going to die. Um, the other two people aren't going to let that slide, and they're just gonna kill you. They don't have to worry about that guy. They'll let that guy die, and then they'll just take you out. So things like Traumatize, which is a really fun and good card. Traumatize basically is for 5 mana, I think, and you make one target opponent mill half their library. That's a lot of fun. That's not in this deck. Um, I, you need to mill the whole table at once, which is what makes Hope so great. It says each opponent mills. So with this, we can gain a bunch of life, which will hopefully prevent our early demise, and we'll just mill that way. The one thing I noticed is that him being a 2/2 and him having lifelink, this especially in the early part of the game, this is how you're triggering off of this is how you're getting your mill. You're only gonna get like 2 to 4. It's just gonna start really small, but it'll build up to an avalanche, and there's a couple cards in here that will just um, make it to where you don't have to work as hard. We'll get into that, but without further ado, this is the third time I've tried to make this deck, and I keep always leaving things out. So we're just gonna go right down this line and just cover everything by and by, so I don't forget anything. So right at the rip, we got a couple board wipes. We have Fumigate, destroy all creatures. You gain 1 life for each creature destroyed this way. Pretty solid. Life gaining deck. Supreme Verdict is the Azorius board wipe. This spell can't be countered. Destroy all creatures. Like if you really gotta just get that board cleared, there it is. And then this is a fun one. White Sun's Twilight. You gain X life. And then you create X 1/1 colorless Phyrexian Might artifact tokens with Toxic 1, and this creature can't block. If X is 5 or more, destroy all other creatures. So it's 7 to get 7 mana to pull this off, but it basically wipes all the creatures out, but it gives you creatures that when they deal combat damage, they also give a poison counter to an opponent. So we're not necessarily trying to win off the poison counter, but crazier things have happened in Commander games, and I'm sure some of y'all can attest to that. We're going to move on to some bombs. Alright, Java. Uh, Aerith Gainsborough. She has lifelink. Again, we're trying to gain as much life as possible. She's a 2/2. Whenever you gain life, you put a +1/+1 counter on Aerith Gainsborough. So that's, I mean, she's just you're going to be able to gain life before going into combat, and so it's definitely going to be a thing where it's like sorry, brain fart. It's definitely going to be a thing where she builds up very quickly, or has potential to build up quickly. Now she doesn't care about the amount of life you gain. All that she cares about is you gain life. So for every instance of life gain that happens, she's going to trigger, not for the amount of life. And that will flip back and forth depending on the cards. So this is a kind of, that's like one little tedious thing you kind of have to pay attention to, but it's not too hard. And obviously, I feel like the table will definitely help you out with that because they don't want you gaining more counters or life than you ought to. But her second ability is where she becomes a bomb. When Aerith Gainsborough dies, put X +1/+1 counters on each legendary creature you control, where X is the number of +1/+1 counters on Aerith Gainsborough. Now, I misread this card so many times, but every legendary creature that you control on the battlefield, when she dies, gets all of her +1/+1 counters, which is absolutely ridiculous. Uh, I might have to think about putting her in Una, in the Una deck, but we'll leave that as is for now. But Hope should be on the battlefield pretty much as often as possible. So at the very least, you'll be able to get him some counters, which will just buff him up and let him get more life, which will then uh, help trigger his milling effect. But altogether, you have 11 legendary creatures, including her and Hope. So I guess if you take her out because she can't give it to herself, you have 10 legendary creatures that you can give this to. So she can get pretty powerful. Uh, Angel of Destiny. If you guys have seen the Heliod video, you've seen this guy. There's a lot of Heliod cards in here. Flying, double strike. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you and that player each gain that much life. Seems kind of ass backwards. So let's get into the second part. At the beginning of your end step, if you have at least 15 life more than your starting life total, each player of this creature attacked this turn loses the game. So that's that's a pretty awesome ability. In a very heavy life gaining deck like this, you're more likely to not going to have 15 more life than your starting life total. Also, this guy's going to give you he doesn't have lifelink, but well, I mean, he kind of does because all the creatures he basically gives all your creatures lifelink. Um, I don't care in a milling deck that I'm giving my opponents life, especially if I have the ability to end the game. This is a card that your opponents can't just let run amok or they will die. So that's why it's a bomb. Sarah Ascendant is the bomb of bombs in white. Uh, Broken in Commander, but we still like it. For one drop, she has lifelink, or he has lifelink, I don't know. As long as you have 30 or more life, which you begin the game at 40, this creature gets +5/+5 and has flying. So right off the rip, if you could turn 1 this, you have a 6/6 flyer on the battlefield, and it can start swinging on turn 2. So turn 1 you play this, turn 2 you play Hope, and then you swing with Sarah Ascendant. Um, yeah. Um, it's just so good. One thing I noted in my playtesting though, if you're ever on turn 2 for whatever reason and you have this and Hope, put this out first. I would almost always recommend putting Hope out turn 2, except if you have Sarah Ascendant. I would go ahead and put Sarah Ascendant out, and then on turn 3 put Hope, because then you can attack with Sarah Ascendant and then trigger Hope at the end of the turn. Versus if you put Hope out, you can attack with Hope on turn 3 and maybe do 2 damage. Uh, but this will have flying and will deal 6 damage. So it's just a better play. So that's just something to note that I found in my playtesting. Then we have our card draw. This is Consecrated Sphinx. Um, it's a for 6. It's a 4/6 and flying. Whenever an opponent draws a card, you may draw 2 cards. Um, so that's really good. Uh, that's giving you at least 6 cards per round. You know, it's just an overall really good card. Of course, we feature the One Ring in pretty much all our decks. It's a really great card. Um, when the One Ring enters, if it was cast, you gain protection from everything until your next turn. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life for each burden counter on the One Ring. Not a big deal in a life gaining deck. Um, when you tap it, you put a burden counter on the One Ring. Then draw a card for each burden counter on the ring. So the ring gives you more and more damage, but more and more cards. So it's just a really fun, awesome card. Um, and then we have Windfall. Each player discards their hand, then draws cards equal to the greatest number of cards a player discarded this way. This might be you, especially if you have Consecrated Sphinx out. Uh, but if you have some Simic players, they might have a bigger hand than you. The two things I want to note about this. Sorry, I just woke up. I don't know why I'm so sleepy. I'll try to pep myself up so the video is not as boring as these videos can be. With a Windfall deck, sorry, with Windfall in the deck, and a mill deck, consider this. Let's say that you're going to windfall and 10 cards. Well, they're going to draw 10 cards off the top of their library. So you effectively got rid of 10 cards from everybody at the table. So this is card draw, but it's also a bit of milling if you think about it in terms of I just need to get their library to 0. So keep that kind of in the back of your mind. You are giving them options, but you also might be removing options, especially somebody already, if they've got like a good plan set up, you might just screw their entire plan up and now they've got to change. So you'll help some and hurt others. So, but hopefully you're helping yourself. Now, the other note I want to put is if you have Consecrated Sphinx out and you windfall, let's say you windfall for 5, so all of your opponents draw 5 cards. So they draw 15 cards. That means Consecrated Sphinx is going to let you draw 30 cards on top of what Windfall is going to let you draw. Now, Consecrated Sphinx is a may draw effect. You do not have to do it. You can decline it, and you should if you're going to mill your own self out. That happened to me in a game where I had to start decline. I had like 15 triggers on the stack, and I had to decline them all. So because I only had like 25 cards left. So just something to be mindful of. Next up, we have our combo Wombo. Uh, this is a really fun combo. I haven't pulled it off yet, but it looks really fun. Famished Paladin. This creature does an untap during your untap step. Whenever you gain life, untap this creature. Alright, you're going to gain a lot of life. But that's not why he's here. He's here for this. Resplendent Mentor. White creatures you control have tap, you gain 1 life. So, with this guy on the battlefield, you're going to tap Famished Paladin to gain 1 life, which will then untap him. And then you'll just tap him again to gain 1 life, which will then untap him, and you can just keep doing this until you're like, I gain 1,000 life, I pass the turn, everybody mill 1,000 cards off hope. That's kind of the goal. Haven't pulled it off yet, but yeah. So that's our combo Wombo. And then we initially I built this deck very controlling, and then I decided I didn't want to do that. There are just other decks to do that with Azorius, and with this I just wanted to focus on Lifegain and Mill and just see what happens. I do, however, put Smothering Tide in the deck. Whenever a player draws a card, that player may pay 2. If the player doesn't, create a treasure token. You almost always get this. Choose a lot of mana to pay. So, And then, of course, the other pay more mana, Rhystic Study. When an opponent casts a spell, you may draw a card unless that player pays 1. Uh, so yeah, it's just a really, it's a little bit of card draw, but I never put Rhystic Study. A lot of people will consider Rhystic Study a card draw. It's not. It is a control, it's a control card. It's meant to control your opponents, and if you just so happen to draw a card off of it, great, but it's not there for you to draw a card, so don't put it in your card drawing stack. That's my opinion, of course. Counter spells, we've only got 4. An offer you can't refuse, counter target non-creature spell. A controller creates 2 treasure tokens. Pretty straightforward. I think this card is slightly better than Swan Song. Swan Song doesn't quite hit all non-creature spells, and this does. It gives them a little bit better. It gives them 2 treasure tokens versus a bird. I'd rather have the treasure tokens in most cases. So it does give them a little something better, but it hits everything except for creatures, of course. Counter spell, it's everything for 1 more mana. Fierce Guardianship, if you control your commander, you may cast a spell without paying its mana cost, and then you can counter target creature spell. Yeah. And then, or sorry, non-creature spell. That's non-creature spell. So we're not super worried about their creatures. We've got 2 spells that can counter creatures and 2 spells that can't counter creatures. Regarding counter spells, the only 2 counters you really need to do is you counter if they're going to devastate your board. Mostly if they're going to affect your win con. If you've got your win con out, like if I've got my combo out and they try to destroy that, you counter that. Absolutely. Or if they try to win the game, then counter that. But other than that, let them ride, and maybe they'll let you ride. You know, unless you're a counter deck, like if you specifically have a bunch of counter spells and your deck is working off counter spells and stuff like that, or you're really into that portion, I would just let it ride out unless they're gonna win or they're gonna affect your board. And of course, Mana Drain is an awesome counter spell for 2 mana. Counter target spell at the beginning of your next main phase. Add an amount of colorless mana equal to the spell's mana value. So this could get you ahead on a turn really good, especially if they like tap out for something big. Um, the lands are pretty straightforward. I don't have anything amazing. Obviously, we're running as many of the fetch lands as we can. I think we're running 7. We just want to get all the lands out that we can. Um, a note that I have for lands is some people are gonna wonder why the new Jador land uh, isn't in it. I can't remember what it's called exactly. It's Jador something. Um, but it's a blue land, comes in tapped. It's an adventure thing. It's one of the location cards from the new Final Fantasy set, and it says the spell version of it uh, lets you cast it and mill somebody for half their library. But the land itself has to come in tapped, and I don't play any lands that have to come in tapped. Um, you'll see. So Prairie Stream is the closest land that has to come in tapped. I don't get an option of when this, like Hollowed Fountain, I can choose to just pay it or not, right? Comes in tap unless I pay 2. It's a shock land. Um, I get the option. With Prairie Stream, I don't get the option, but I can also just not fetch it unless it will come in untapped. And so I do not play lands that come in tapped. I've been burned so many times. It feels so bad when you need that extra land to affect the game right there and then, and you draw the land and you're like yes, and then you're like damn it, it comes in tapped. It's a kick in the nuts. So I don't run them. I can't do it. So there's my lands. All right, so we got a lot of life gaining decks or cards in the deck. Now with life gaining, I don't just mean gives you life. So you're going to see 2 types of life gain in this deck. You're going to see things that give you life gain, obviously, or give you life in some capacity. Or like this card, gives you more life when you do gain life. So Angel of Vitality is flying 2/2. If you would gain life, you gain that much life plus 1 instead. This creature gets +2/+2 as long as you have 25 or more life. Um, so this does give you more life, which will help prevent your death. And then for every, that's 1 more card that Hope is going to mill. So, um, and then if you ever have uh, if you ever have a card that doubles your life, um, you get to decide if the life doubling happens first or the +1 happens first. So obviously you want to have the +1 and then double that because you'll get more life overall. For instance, if I was going to gain 2 life and then I doubled it to 4 and then add 1, I'd get 5. But if I added the 1 first, I'd have 3 and then double that, I'd have 6. So it's just a little bit more efficient. It's not a big deal, but like sometimes it can matter. And we want to have the most efficient plays we can possibly have at the table. Beacon of Immortality is almost a win con. Double target player's life total. Shuffle Beacon of Immortality into its owner's life, or to his owner's library. Um, I mean, if you're at 40 or more life and this thing goes off with a hope on the field, like you can pretty much just. I mean, that's probably the game right there. That's 7 mana. I mean, that's probably the game. Uh, More often than not, it is either the game or about to be the game. Um, the relevant ruling is right here. Beacon of Immortality's effect counts as life gain, so it will trigger off of hope. Um, Boon Reflection, if you would gain life, you gain twice that much life instead. I mean, honestly, if you have this out and hope, and then you cast Beacon of Immortality, that's GG. Cleric class. This is just a cute card. It could be cut for something better. I'm not like fixated on this card, but I do love it. If you would gain life, you would gain that much +1 instead. And then you can level it up to level 2. Whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. I would honestly just target Hope so that he can get in more hits, or any other life gaining creature you have on the field is a good target for it. The level 3 is okay. It's a one-shot effect. When this class becomes level 3, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. You gain life equal to that creature's toughness. I mean, it's obviously good. It's not in here for that. Obviously, it's in here for this and a little bit of this. Um, Congregate. Target player gains 2 life for each creature on the battlefield. Amazing against the token players. Um, Daxus Omelitas, he's kind of like a wild, weird card. But I do love my Daxus. He's an awesome character, and he hooked up with my boo Elspeth. Daxus can't be blocked by creatures with power 3 or greater. So, when Daxus deals combat damage to a player, exile the top card of that player's library. You gain life equal to that card's mana value. Until end of turn, you may cast that card, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast that spell. So, it's just absolute wild card. If you have him on a battlefield during your first main phase, don't cast anything. Don't use any mana that you don't have to, um, so that you can swing with him. And then, if you only have 2 mana when you swing with him, and the card is really good. Let's say it's a chromatic lantern for three mana. Well, now you can't cast that. It's just better to wait until after you swing with him. Um, Heliod's Intervention. This is in here because it allows me to choose. We like options. Destroy X target artifacts or enchantment, or target player gains twice X life. So again, it's just another like I'm gonna gain some extra life. Leyline of Hope. If this card is in your opening hand, you may begin the game with it on the battlefield. If you would gain life, you gain that much life +1 instead. As long as you have 7 or more life, then you're starting your life total. Creatures you control get +2/+2. We don't really care too much about this. We care about this and this. Being able to start this on the battlefield and just go ahead and get that extra ping of life is awesome. Rock's Faithmender, lifelink, and if you would gain life, you gain twice that much life instead. Uh, Pretty self-explanatory. This card, this card might get cut, but at the same time, I want to find a way to make this go infinite, and I just haven't found it yet. So if you guys have the way to do that, please let me know so I can change this deck up. The partnering doesn't matter, but he has flying. Whenever you draw a card, put a +1/+1 counter on Shabraz, and you gain 1 life. Target human flying till the end of turn, that's fine. You can maybe make Hope flying if you have to. But what I really need is something that says when I gain a life, draw a card. Um, and then that will just trigger indefinitely. And yeah, so that's what I'm looking for. But I haven't used him yet, so I don't know how good he is in the deck. But I do want a combo wombo with him. I haven't found it yet, but we're working on it. But he's still, I think, will be a pretty solid addition. Sphinx Revelation. You gain X life and draw X cards. This just does everything that we want. We're gonna gain life, draw cards, and mill our opponent. That's everything we want. The Wind Crystal. White spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. If you would gain life, you gain twice that much life instead. And then for 6, you can give your creatures flying and lifelink until end of turn. So, you know. Wall of Reverence. Wow. I know English. Defender and Flyer. Wow. I haven't had my coffee, that's what it is. At the beginning of your end step, you may gain life equal to the power of target creature you control. Well, hopefully Aerith is on the battlefield and she got real big and nasty. Okay, so that's it for Lifegain. We have 1 ramp, Sad Robot or Solemn Simulacrum. When this creature enters, you may search your library for a basic land card, put that card onto the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. And then when this creature dies, you may draw a card. Don't be afraid to swing with this guy. You want him to die. Or block. We have our Mana Rocks, of course. We have Arcane Signet, Chrome Mox, Manavolt, Mox Diamond, and Soul Ring. These are like the 5 Mana Rocks that I just kind of gravitate to naturally. I'll take Mana Vault out if there's a Mana Rock that specifically fits the theme of the deck. You'll see that in the Heliod where I took it out to put the Pantheon in there. That adds an extra devotion. Um, but yeah, so that's so we'll get into milling. Milling is kind of the same thing as lifelink in the sense that we're either trying to mill cards or we're trying to increase the amount of milling that we do. Speaking of which, we have the OG Bruvac the Grandiloquent. Uh, if an opponent would mill one or more cards, they mill twice that many cards instead. So doubling life gain and doubling milling effects works really well in this deck, and it'll get you there real quick. Fractured Sanity, each opponent mills 14 cards. Yeah, notice it says each opponent, not target opponent. And then you can cycle to pay 2, discard, draw a card if you need to. And then when you cycle this, each opponent mills 4 cards. That's, yeah. Hadron Craft, you play him first, and then you throw a land down, and then whenever a land you enter, target player mills 3 cards. Now I know I'm like, target player, do just target player mill, but I mean this is just every time you hit a land, you're gonna get 3 cards off of it. And then there's Rudin Crab, which basically does the exact same thing. So you get them both out, and you're doing 6 just for dropping a land. It's not bad. That's my exception to the rule. You know, rules are more of a guideline more than actual hard and fast rules. Maddening Cacophony. Each opponent mills 8 cards. If this spell was kicked, instead each opponent mills half their library rounded up. Yeah, I don't think I need to say anything about that. Like this is your best mill card right there. Except for this one. Riverchan Monument. Any number of target players each mill 2 cards. Not a big deal. The next part though is you exhaust, which means it doesn't untap during oh, each exhaust ability only once. No, I'm wrong. You can only activate the exhaust ability only once. Oh, I thought exhaust meant that you tap it and it doesn't untap during its next untap. Okay, well that's fine. Hold on, let's look in the rule. Leaves the battlefield and returns to the battlefield, becomes a new object. Okay. Oh yeah, okay, yeah. So okay, I was wrong on that. It's still pretty good. Um, You're only going to need this once. Any number of target players, each mill cards equal to the number of cards in their graveyard. You're essentially like, if they've got 40 cards in their graveyard, you're just going to mill them out. So you're only going to need this once, to be honest. Um, I played one game with Hope so far on MTGO, and I had this out, and it was a crazy game. And on my next turn, I was going to be able to activate this, and that was going to be the game right there. But the guy, it was just me and one opponent left. He was playing Sephiroth, and he started casting some things, and I got a little scared, so I cast Teferi's Protection, and with Teferi's Protection on the stack, he was able to kill me. So that's how close that game got. It was a really good game, but with this out, and with him having like 45 cards in his library, and this was going to be it. Um, so this is almost a win con in itself because of how broken this ability is if you have been consistently milling or have gotten some good hits off of it. Rune Craft, basically Hedron Craft, Landfall, mill 3. Oh, except each opponent mills 3. So that's even better. It'd actually almost be worth taking Hedron Craft out and just rolling with this guy and then putting something else in. So that's something I'll consider. Um, yeah. The Mind Sinker. I have mixed feelings about this card. Uh, he can't be blocked. He's a 10/1, which is ridiculous. Uh, Especially for a 3 cost. If a source you control would deal damage to an opponent, prevent that damage, and each opponent mills that many cards. So that's really cool. Um, the problem with it is if you prevent the damage, you don't gain life from any lifelink abilities. So on one hand, I guess it doesn't matter now that I think about it because I'm not getting life and I'm just directly milling anyway. Like if Hope swings for 2, his instead of gaining 2 life, he's going to mill 2. So the end result, the milling, which is what we're really trying to do, is going to happen regardless. So I guess it's still great. This should be a bomb, to be honest. Like your opponents can't let this thing go off. Everybody milling 10 plus cards. That's not And then we come to the water crystal. I have misread this card and I have played this card wrong. And so for my testings, I think I have probably one or two games where I misplayed the way the deck works because I misread this. Blue spells you cast cost one less to cast. If an opponent would mill one or more cards, they mill that many cards plus four instead. It doesn't double, which is what I thought. So my my playtesting might be a little off, but I don't think will have mattered that much in the grand scheme of things. For six, you can each opponent mills cards equal to the number of cards in your hand, which is okay. I would have preferred it set in the graveyard, but again, we saw how broken that was on the other card that did that. So it's not a bad card. It's in there. You know, we had to run the crystals if we could. We have four protections. Cyclonic Rift, I don't consider this a board wipe. It is protection. They swing at you, you overload Cyclonic Rift and say, don't swing at me again. Boom. Um, yeah. Flawless Maneuvers. If you control a commander, you may cast this spell without paying its mana cost. Creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. Boom. Yeah. And then Riot Control. This prevents all damage that would be dealt to you, but you also gain one life for each creature your opponents control. So you know, not every, yeah. And then, of course, the OG Teferi's protection until end of turn. Your life total can't change, and you gain protection from everything. All permanents you control phase out. While they're phased out, you're treated as though they don't exist. They're treated as they don't exist. And they phase in before your untap step during your upkeep. And then you exile Teferi's protection. Just a really great card all around. Unless, you have it on the stack and somebody kills you. Two removals, path to exile. Exile target creature, its controller may search your library for a basic land card and put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. And then Swords to Plowshare. Exile target creature, an opponent gains life equal to its power. Its controller gains life equal to its power. Don't be afraid to cast this on your big creature if you need to secure a win. Just a little option for you. Um, so staggering, I was trying to give them like cute Final Fantasy XIII tags, but I didn't. Um, Delaney Streetwise Lookout. Creatures you control with power 2 or less can't be blocked by creatures with power 3 or greater. And then, if an ability of a creature you control with power 2 or less triggers, that ability triggers an additional time. Hope meets that criteria, so you would get double triggers off Hope so long as he doesn't have any +1/+1 counters on him. Go-Go, this guy is gross, master of mimicry. For XX, tap, copy target activated, or trigger ability when you control X times. You may choose new targets for those copies. This ability can't be copied, and X can't be 0. Um, yeah, so the XX means that if you pay 2 mana, you get 1 activation. The X will be 1. You'll copy it 1 time. If you pay 4, you'll copy it 2 times. So however much mana, divide by 2. We don't do rounding. We don't do halvesies here. Um, but if you can trigger Hope's ability 2 or 3 times and you gain a lot of life, this is so good. Shroud Resignator, basically the same thing. Copy target ability you control. You may choose new target for the copy. So basically, copying my dude's Hope's end of turn trigger. And then Yashtola rule. At the beginning of your end step, exile target creature you control, then return to the battlefield under its owner's control. Don't really care about that. If you have, I'm not sure it's super relevant in any of the creatures that I can think of off the top of my head. Um, it will let you take a tapped creature and bring it in untapped, so pseudo vigilance. But the last line right here. Then, if it is your first end step at the of the turn, there's an additional end step after this step. Yeah, so just doubling that effect. And then we have 2 tutors. Enlightened Tutor, search your library for an artifact or enchantment card. I'll show you which enchantment and which artifact card you're probably going to want to search for. Reveal that, then shuffle it and put it on top. Mystical Tutor, search your library for an instance or sorcery card. Reveal it, then shuffle and put that card on top. I usually get Cyclonic Rift with this, but the game can dictate what you get. And then for win cons, Aether Flux Reservoir. Whenever you cast a spell, you gain 1 life for each spell you've cast this turn, and you can pay 50. This artifact deals 50 damage to any target. So while we're not trying to kill people with damage necessarily, we're not afraid to do so. So you can fetch this artifact with Enlightened Tutor. Um, Feldar Sovereign is Vigilance, Lifelink, and at the beginning of your upkeep, if you have 40 or more life, you win the game. You should have that. This is almost a bomb, but because you can win the game. Boom. Test of Endurance at the beginning of your upkeep. If you have 50 or more life, you win the game. So it's basically an enchantment version of Feldar Sovereign. A little harder to pull off, but you can also fetch it with Enlightened Tutor. With that said, that's the whole deck right there. Um, Now, the last thing I'll talk about is the turns to win right here, the 7.7. The way I calculated that is you go to playtest, and oh, there's the restored version of a game I was playing. So you go to playtest. It's pretty neat little thing in here in Mox Field. Um, but I basically play the deck until I win. Uh, and this deck it was a little harder because I'm not winning through damage. I'm winning through mills, so I had to keep track of cards I would have milled, which is more tedious than you think it would be. Um, but by doing that, I noticed that I could win the game on an average of 7.7. And if you want to see the actual results, you can scroll all the way down. I have my turns right here. This was a horrible outlier. I took that out and it came down to 7.1. So about a 7-turn win rate if nobody interacts with you, which is obviously probably not going to happen, but it kind of gives you a sense of like how fast and how hard the deck can hit. Um, and that's it. That's all I have for Hope. We're gonna. I want to start organizing maybe a Commander Monday uh, where we can jump on MTGO and I can record some of these decks being played. Now that we finally built up our MTGO collection to where we can actually play some of these decks. Um, but yeah, so I'm gonna set that up in the next couple of weeks. Uh, expect a Discord channel, and we'll get a Twitch set up, and we'll do all that stuff, and we'll have some fun. Keep, Magic's about having fun, so go out there, have fun. This is a very interesting commander. Uh, yeah, that's all I got. Peace.